What a year for Army in 2024. I don't think anybody anticipated them competing in the AAC like they did, let alone winning a conference championship. But that's Jeff Monken for you. Right when you think you have Jeff Monken figured out, or you think, hey, this is the beginning of the end, he finds a way to surprise you. And this year is going to be probably no exception. I think that there's definitely some doubt with this program in terms of who they lose and who's coming back, but that's exactly where they want to be. And it feels like Army is kind of a program that just reloads year in and year out. And today we take a look at the players that are going to make that happen, as well as look at the schedule and what we think will happen in 2025. We start with the skill positions, and Noah Short is probably the best name, the best skill position player that you probably don't know. And this is a guy who is a Swiss Army knife for this offense. When you look at what he's capable of doing as a runner and as a pass catcher, you see that this is an absolute nightmare to cover. 75 rushes last year for 569 yards. That's good for 7.6 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns there. He also added 17 catches, 318 yards. That's good for 18.7 yards per catch and 3 touchdowns. Now, we saw Army and Navy do a little bit of a different approach to their triple option. I think there were some rule changes that made them change their identity a tiny bit, but this is still a team that is going to run the football. Now, they did pass a little bit more than we normally expect them to, but they still were a run heavy team. That being said, Noah Short is someone that you have to worry about as a runner, as a pass catcher, and Army's offense, the triple offense, option offense, is still just as difficult, even with those rule changes. And Noah Short is a big reason why. Another big reason for their success last year was their defense. This is a defense that finished top 25 in a lot of statistical categories, and they probably should be back. They should be back and just as difficult to block and get past this year. Now, they do lose a couple of big names, which is very surprising. We saw a number of big names leave in the transfer portal this year. And that being said, I think the linebacker position, though they do lose a big player, having a guy like Andon Thomas back is huge. And I think that they are in good hands with him returning. This is someone who had 98 tackles last year, 4 tackles for loss. And you look at what this defense needed in 2024, they needed big plays from their front seven, and they got it. And I think that that's something that's going to replicate in 2025. Army's defenses deserve almost as much credit as their offenses do for how difficult they are to beat. And last year, you could argue that they had an even more important role in the success that they have to finish 12-2. And Andon Thomas is a big reason why. A disruptive player and someone who is going to fly to the football and make big plays. Before we continue with the video, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and take a look. It takes a couple of seconds. It helps the channel grow. We've seen tremendous growth in the last couple of years, and we'd like to keep that going. Doing a giveaway at 10,000 subscribers, so we're hoping to hit that goal this year, and you make that happen. But let's get back to the video. Another reason for optimism is another linebacker. Caleb Fortner is another guy to keep an eye on. Honorable mention, all AAC last year, 81 tackles, 10 tackles for loss. So more disruptive than his counterpart. And it'll be interesting to see who fills that outside linebacker position this year. You have Fortner and Thomas manning the two off the ball linebacker positions. Elo Mendoza was the guy that filled the outside linebacker position role last year. He's off to Georgia. So you have to find someone to fill his role. That being said, you feel like you're in good hands with a combination of Fortner and Thomas behind the defensive line. You feel like you have a good set of leaders that are going to make things happen. And this unit as a whole, while it may take a step back with some of the players that it lost, you still feel like they're in really good hands. Now, if you don't have a good offensive line, the triple option really isn't going to work. And having a center in Brady Smallback is huge, especially when you lose Bryson Daly. Bryson Daly is not going to be running the offense this year. You have a new quarterback coming into play. So having a veteran center like Brady Small makes life a lot easier. 26 games of experience, 14 starts last year. That experience is going to help tremendously with whoever is taking the snaps under center. The triple option is only as good as the offensive line is going to take it. And right now, you feel like you're in good hands so far if you're Army. Now we'll see who actually wins the quarterback battle, but Dwayne Coleman feels like a really good fit for this offense and feels like he's the next guy up. 121 passing yards last year, 136 rushing yards. You watch what he did in 2024, feels like he's the next guy up. But again, he has to win that job. And when we talk about a new quarterback coming in, it's going to take some time for him to get comfortable. He's only 5'10", 190 pounds. So maybe you want to see him bulk up and be able to endure some of the big hits that he's going to take running this triple option offense, especially because Army and Navy, they both want their quarterbacks to be the primary, not ball carrier, but primary producer in the run game. If that is the case, they are making big plays. And we saw that with Bryson Daly last year. You saw this offense take great strides because the quarterback had a good grip on the offense. It was almost a master of what he was doing. If Dwayne Coleman can progress faster than expected, this offense is in great hands. Paolo Gennarelli is another offensive lineman that's going to make everything a lot easier. Brady Small is going to obviously play a huge role, but having another interior offensive lineman makes life for Dwayne Coleman so much easier. You know that you're probably not getting penetration, especially up the middle, because you have a first team all AAC center, a second AAC all AAC team guard. You feel like you're in a good position with the offensive line you have. You feel like you don't have to worry about too many things. And with a new quarterback, sometimes that's everything when you're trying to get settled. The secondary also took a hit with the transfer portal. You saw Donovan Platt and Jaden Mays go into the transfer portal. Those are two big players to depart, but you do have a guy like Justin Weaver coming back. Maybe not as productive last year as those two, but did still have 2 interceptions, 36 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss. Again, I don't want to call Army a plug and play, but if you have the right people in place, it's kind of like that. Army is just one of those programs that has the right guys. They're a hard-nosed team. They play with a ton of passion, a ton of speed, and Justin Weaver is going to be the next guy to step up and be one of those players. We talked about the linebackers. The defensive line has some talent to replace as well, but Cody Harris-Miller coming back was a huge return for them. 29 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks as a defensive tackle. This is a group that is going to have to collectively play better. Again, you lose Mendoza as that edge rusher. You have a defensive end position that's open. You have to find a starter there, but Harris-Miller is a nice force to have up front. You have some consistency up front. And again, with Thomas and Fortner behind him, they're able to make certain plays, but having a guy in the interior defensive line to make plays up front makes your life easier if you're a linebacker. It also helps your defense as a whole, gives your secondary less time to cover. So having him up front is absolutely huge. Now, Noah Short needs some help. He can't do everything himself, but fortunately for him, there's plenty of talent to help him out. Hayden Reed is one of those guys that could step up in a big way. Had a pretty productive year in his role. Wasn't one of the starters, but did manage to rush the ball 40 times, 207 yards. That number figures to go up this year. Real thing is going to be replacing Kanye Udo. That's going to be the biggest one. And if Dwayne Coleman and whoever the new big back is going to be can find some chemistry, and maybe it's not with the big back, maybe it's with Noah Short, maybe it's with Hayden Reed. Again, Jeff Monken, you have to almost trust him at this point that he knows who he's going to feature, and Hayden Reed could be one of those guys. Now, a guy that could be an absolute force for this offense is Jake Rendina. 29 carries last year for 104 yards, so not anything overly impressive, but he's 5'11", 255 pounds. And some of our favorite, and I say our college football as a whole, some of our favorite players are these fullbacks, these bigger backs for triple option offenses that are just absolute units. And he could be the next guy. It's going to look a little bit different this year, purely based off personnel change. And Jake Rendina could be a guy that becomes one of those beloved players. He could become one of those guys that we talk about as, remember this guy? This guy was absolutely so much fun to watch. And Army is in a good position with the players they have coming back. Even if they're new, you feel like they have the right pieces in place to continue doing what they're doing in 2024. Now, there's not a win total out for Army. A lot of the group of 5 win totals aren't out quite yet, so we're just going to make it up from here. I think that with the number of players they lose offensively at key positions, I think the win total goes down to 8. But when I put that together, it feels like it could be, you could say 9. I don't have a problem with that. When you look at the schedule, though, I see a ceiling of 11-1. I don't think that they're going to beat Kansas State, though I could be wrong. Kansas State has struggled with teams like Tulane last year, so that's a team that could definitely be surprised. But it's early in the season. Triple option typically isn't up and running by that point. So with a new quarterback, a couple new running backs, you maybe think they need a little bit more time to get acclimated with each other. So the Kansas State is one that I chalked up to a loss, but I will be happily wrong. North Texas is a team that could be interesting. ECU as well. UAB and Charlotte felt like 2 wins. If you're Army, you shouldn't be losing to UAB or Charlotte. At Tulane, a rematch of the AAC championship game. That is one that's going to be big. Both teams are going through kind of a facelift offensively and defensively for that matter. For Tulane, probably more so than Army defensively, but that'll be a really fun rematch from last year. Air Force, obviously, battling for the Commander-in-Chief trophy. That's going to be an interesting matchup. Temple is a team that could be much better. Tulsa is in the process of a rebuild, so you feel like that's a win. At UTSA and Navy to end the year, that is a tough 2-game stretch. UTSA is going to be really tough to stop through the air, and hopefully Army has their secondary all put together by that time. And then obviously the Navy game. Maybe you're playing in the AAC championship again before you face Navy, but this is a team that honestly, at worst, I see 8-4. Maybe things fall out and it's worse than that, but I just don't see that. So I think that 11-1 is the ceiling, 8-4 is the floor. You're looking at a team that is looking to defend its crown, looking to go back to back and have a potential another double-digit win season.